Mr. President, I'm Dr. Gabriel Suswam, Benue North-East Senatorial District. Mr. President, I'm the mover of this motion, and there are about 24 co-sponsors on this motion. The motion is about power sector recovery plan and the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Aware that at the outbreak of the dreaded COVID-19 pandemic, the federal government, through the Federal Minister of Finance, intimated the leadership of the National Assembly of plans to establish 1.7 trillion COVID-19 crisis intervention fund to be utilized to upgrade healthcare facilities across the country, stimulate agriculture, solid mineral, power sector, and also execute social intervention programs that will benefit the masses. Note that while the appropriate executive bill that will articulate the actual use of the proposed 1.7 trillion COVID-19 crisis intervention fund is yet to be presented to the Senate for consideration, the devastating impact of the pandemic on the power sector has necessitated the need for the Senate to draw the attention of the federal government to the need to include the sector in the disbursements of the proposed fund, bearing in mind the vital role of stable electricity supply to current efforts towards jump-starting the economy, which is still groaning under the impact of the pandemic. Note further that stable, uninterrupted power supply is also a critical factor in the management of COVID-19 patients at the designated isolation and treatment centers across the country, as well as the implementation of the proposed upgrade of healthcare facilities across the country and even after the pandemic. The importance of uninterrupted power supply to critical segment of the economy, like the manufacturing sector, cannot be overemphasized, as the manufacturing sector relies heavily on uninterrupted power supply to thrive. Aware that prior to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic and its attendant negative impact on the Nigerian electricity supply industry, the NESI was already facing teething operational constraints, including the absence of cost-reflective tariff, inadequate enumeration and metering of customers, limited access to funds for investment, poor revenue generation, and high level of aggregate technical, commercial, and collection losses. Generation companies, GENCOs, were owed 72% of their revenue in 2019, while electricity distribution companies reported average AT and C losses of 41% in the same year. All these constraints prevented the NESI from performing optimally across the power value chain. Aware also that this distinguished Senate has a clear demonstration of a commitment to profile lasting legislative solution to the challenges confronting the NESI, recently mandated the Standing Committee on Power to brainstorm with the relevant stakeholders in a roundtable on the constraint of the NESI with a view to addressing them in the interest of the Nigerian economy. Report of the proceeding of the roundtable held on Monday, 9 December 2019, including recommendation for the way forward, has been laid and is awaiting consideration. Alarm that the COVID-19 pandemic has further impacted negatively on the NESI, as DISCOs reported 50% losses of the average monthly average revenue collection for the month of March and April 2020, respectively, even as the federal government continued to harp on the need for stable electricity supply, especially during this pandemic. Further alarm that if the negative impact of COVID-19 on the NESI continues without emergency financial intervention from the federal government, DISCOs already facing dwindling revenue in the wake of the pandemic may not be able to meet their remittance obligation to the market as said by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission (NEC) in December 2019 tariff order. This will also affect the financial obligation of the Transmission Company of Nigeria (TCN), which is expected to have a cost-reflective charge of 3.7 naira kilowatt per hour to 8.3 kilowatt per hour by 1st of July 2020. The financial obligation of GENCOs and gas-to-power supply will be also negatively impacted, while banks that lend to oil and gas producers may face deteriorating credit quality, making it harder for operators to access the much-needed fund for investment. Aware that in the past, under the Power Sector Recovery Plan, the federal government, through the Central Bank of Nigeria and other international money lending institutions, extended some financial intervention to the power sector, but the actual adequacy or impact of such facilities remain uncertain due to either lack of proper oversight by the industry regulator or poor compliance with corporate governance for the industry on the part of the regulator and market participants. These interventions were not properly spread across the power value, particularly the distribution segment of the power sector. Accordingly, resolved, commend the federal government for the proactive initiative to establish the 1.7 trillion COVID-19 crisis intervention fund to cater for issues that are critical to effective management of the pandemic and to stimulate gradual return to normal socio-economic activities in the country. All the federal government, through the Federal Ministry of Finance, to include the Nigerian Electricity Power Sector in the disbursement of the proposed 1.7, not 500, Mr. President. There's 500 billion, it's 1.7. 1.7 trillion COVID-19 crisis intervention fund in order to ameliorate the financial hazard and operational challenges, such as the enumeration and metering of actual customers and recent problems arising from the pandemic. Or the federal government to suspend the planned tariff increase, which is scheduled to take effect from 1st of July 2020, bearing in mind increasing hardship resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. I need to emphasize on number 3. There is a proposal, Mr. President, that is more like on default. By 1st of July, there is supposed to be a cost-reflective tariff that will increase the tariff on electricity. What this prayer seeks is that this Senate urge the federal government not to kick in that tariff in view of the sufferings of Nigeria. 4, mandate the Senate Committee on Power to investigate all government intervention in the power sector since the privatization of the sector to date, with a view to ascertaining the adequacy of such interventions and their desired impact, and to report back within 4 weeks. 5, mandate the Senate Committee on Power to investigate all market participants in the power value chain and ascertain the level of corporate governance compliance in the Nigerian Electricity Industry, and to report back within 4 weeks. 6, urge the Central Bank of Nigeria to allow operators in the power sector access to foreign exchange for procurement of equipment materials like what is done in the aviation and oil industry. And finally, 7, urge the federal government to consider additional tariff support to cushion the effect and rate of shock over a fixed period to allow time required for TCN and DISCOs to access funds, implement performance improvement investment that will support increased tariff to certain classes of customers, especially during the pandemic. This last one, Mr. President, is also to all the federal government, because if the federal government does not continue to provide what you call subsidy, down the line, even before at the end of this year, we might have problems. So what we are saying is that the federal government should consider with the subsidy regime, but then with monitoring, so that when, after the auditing of these entities, the federal government now determine how best to run them. At that point, there will be efficiency in the industries, and so even if there's cost-reflective tariff at that time, certain categories of customers will be able to attend to it. Mr. President.
Prior to, urge the federal government through the Federal Ministry of Finance to include the Nigerian electric power sector in the disbursement of the proposed 1.7 billion naira COVID-19 crisis intervention fund in order to ameliorate the financial hazards and operational challenges, such as the enumeration of metering of actual consumers and recent problems arising from the pandemic. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3, urge the federal government to suspend the planned tariff increase which is scheduled to take effect from 1st July 2020, bearing in mind increased hardship resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Those in favor of prayer 3 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 4, mandate the Senate Committee on Power to investigate all federal government interventions in the power sector since the privatization of the sector to date, with a view to ascertaining the adequacy of such interventions and their desired impact, and to report back within 4 weeks. Those in favor of prayer 4 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 5, mandate the Senate Committee on Power to investigate all market participants in the power value chain and ascertain the level of corporate governance compliance in the Nigerian Electricity Industry, NESI, and report back within 4 weeks. Those who have this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 6, urge the Central Bank of Nigeria to allow operators in the power sector access to foreign exchange for procurement of equipment and materials, like what is done in the aviation and oil industry. Those in favor of prayer 6 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. And prayer 7, urge the federal government to consider additional tariff support to cushion the effect of rate shock over a fixed period to allow time required for TCN and DISCOs to access funds and implement performance improvement investments that will support increased tariffs to certain classes of customers, especially during the pandemic. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Like I said before this motion was taken, the privatization of the power sector has so far not been successful. We expected efficiency and effectiveness in power supplies, but I think probably on both sides, the share purchase agreements maybe were not adhered to by both sides, but definitely what is obvious is the DISCOs, and particularly DISCOs, have no capacity at the moment to give us, to supply us power. The GENCOs have challenges too. And I think it's not a good commentary that we should continue to give them money after we sold them to. These are businesses now, they are private businesses. If there are areas that we must intervene as a government, must be seriously justified, but the way it is, I think there is need to review this privatization and see what has really happened, because something is certainly not right. And for the next 10 years, if there is nothing fundamental and drastic in this sector, nothing like power will be stable in Nigeria. And that will be unfortunate. So it's good our committee is investigating even the previous billions, hundreds of billions, in fact over $1 trillion, 701 billion, 650 billion, and so on and so forth. You are even going to give them 601 billion. That's a lot of money, and there must be justification for this. So try to find out what has happened. We hope that they will be effective, but in the event that this thing is not addressed properly, there will be need for government really to look into this privatization that has taken place, because probably the wrong investors took over, or maybe government is not fulfilling its own promise, because there must be responsibilities for government that is part of the share purchase agreement. Government must fulfill its own part of the agreement in order to help those that took over to be effective and efficient. But I think there is lack of capital, there is lack of investment. The complaints will be that there is no, what do they call it, proper tariff. But we feel very bad about it because we have no electricity and the country is suffering. Thank you very much. Leader of the Senate.